Hello and welcome to the Poor Hammer Podcast, episode 81. I'm your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
We're recording this very late because my brother's basement flooded. That's where all of our Warhammer stuff is.
Yay.
It's been a good week.
Yeah, I didn't want to ask about that, but...
It's salvaged, mostly.
Alright.
So with all of that happy stuff out of the way, let's have a fun budget episode. If you had to build up from scratch for some reason, how would you do it for hobbying?
Yeah, what if?
So without any further ado, let's jump into this week's topic. What paints would you buy if you had to buy only a few paints in your collection? Few in air quotes.
Sounds good.
Alright, so I had this idea a while ago and decided to execute on it this week, which I guess caused a flood. But this was my idea of a desert island paint set. If you're new, a question a lot of people ask when they're like looking to get into things and they know they want to play, they know they've got an army picked out now, and they're like, I don't want to waste money on all these hobby supplies and paints and stuff. How can I avoid doing that? What's the best paint? I'm sure a ton of painters have that question asked to them by new players constantly.
Yeah, and I mean, there's always going to be an amount of subjective.
Yes, so there's the unfun, boring, correct answer, which is there is no right answer. Here are things that you should be aware of, and then you let them make their own choices and mistakes.
But how about we actually give answers?
Yeah, let's actually think through and give the answers our play group believes.
Yeah.
So, this list is our answers for which paints we would own if we had to start over again with our experience.
So let's start off with the two basics, black and white.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of people will remind you there's no such thing as magic paint that will make you better.
That's true, but...
There are two magic paints. They are Vallejo Model Color Black, 70.950, which is a number people just have memorized because that is Vallejo Model Color Black. That is black. You don't pick other blacks.
It's the correct black.
It is always correct. And the second magic paint is Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White, except no substitute. Second place would be Vallejo Model Color White was my old go-to, but it was kind of a pain in the ass. And sometimes I would just use a white ink to cover up for that. I don't have to care anymore.
Pro Acryl Bold Titanium is, honestly, it is the magic paint. Like, the black Vallejo is good. It's the correct black. It does the job. But, like, Pro Acryl's Bold Titanium lets you do so much with other substandard paints because it gives you coverage.
Yes, and brightens a color while giving coverage, which is usually very difficult to do.
Yeah, so it's one of those that, like, yes, it's an amazing white, but it also gives you so much more for some of the other paints that aren't quite as good.
Okay, so with those two out of the way, we're now to the point where there's not really right answers for the rest. These are very personalized. So up next, we have Ivory. I really don't like Pro Acryl's Ivories, I'm not gonna lie to you. It's one of the weak points in the original range, in my opinion. There's some good ones in the Artist series now, but we're getting into like Ivory variants.
Right. And I actually don't mind it, but Vallejo's better.
Yeah, if you just need a generic color for like bone or beige in general, just go with Pale Sand from Vallejo. It's very good. Dana Howell made an entire YouTube channel based off of two paints. One of them is Pale Sand, and the other one is on the list because I am a believer.
Yeah.
Next up, we have a dark gray choice. We're going to tend to go like dark color, normal version of that color, brighter version of that color. That's how we'll tend to do all of these.
There's some basic attempt of organization, but
little bit.
Yeah.
So for dark gray, we asked around a group and we didn't really have like a good answer. So I'm going to say one that I've recently started using and loving, which is Scale 75 Petroleum Gray. It is close to black. It is like a black highlight color. It's really good looking to me. There's something about the way it catches the light. It's got just a bit of like color to it, and it feels so good when it's highlighting a black, and it makes your black really pop.
I feel like any dark gray has just been one of those like, okay, just mix to the color that you want kind of thing.
Sure, that's a thing that absolutely is a correct answer, but a reason this list is 50 paints long.
Yeah, but I mean, it's one of those that, like, to me at least, it's easier to do the gray, you know, the kind of like monochrome than to try and figure out how to make a yellow.
Correct, but that gets into the other thing though. We want to have enough variety in the list that you shouldn't need to mix a color unless you want to for some reason, because like when you're army painting. There's a reason people own 35 reds.
That's true.
It's not just to own 35 reds because we have issues with not making purchases.
I mean, that is a large reason, but...
It's a reason, but it's not the reason. It's because when you're painting 150 models, you do not want to custom mix a color.
Right.
It's a pain after 6 months to go, oh, I have to mix up that custom blue again. How do I make that so that my army matches? Because all their coats are this weird color.
Yeah, which is kind of a pain, especially for troops and that kind of stuff. But from dark gray, normal gray.
So for normal gray, I'm going with Pro Acryl Bright Neutral Gray. There's actually a lot of choices here. I looked at one in scale 75. I looked at one in Vallejo.
I don't like the scale 75 one.
Graphite's cool. Scale 75 is a weird paint brand to recommend to new people.
Yeah.
It's an ultra matte paint range. It means sometimes it can be weird to work with if you're new.
I mean, there are some good paints from it. I mean, that's why like some of them are on the list. But silver?
Silver, there's two options. Both of them are the same. There is Vallejo Metal Color, Duraluminum, and Dark Aluminum. Those are two different paints. They say so on the tin.
Are they?
I don't believe it. I used dark aluminum as my main color for my Necrons. I've switched to duraluminum when I do a bunch of mixing colors nowadays, where I just take that base paint and mix in inks to get any color metal I want.
Yeah.
It's real good. You should do that. Marco Frazzoni, absolutely phenomenal.
And I mean, that does come to the aspect of like, we're banning all of the inks and that kind of stuff. But like, when it comes to metals, getting a good base like Vallejo Duraluminum and then supplementing it once you experiment enough, it just opens up that extra bit of possibility.
Yeah. So I think of the non-black, non-white, which paints are irreplaceable. It's this specific paint, either it or dark aluminum. I guess you could say it's replaceable by itself. But like Vallejo Metal Color is the only good metal paint that I enjoy using. It has a single weakness in its range, which is gold, and we'll get to gold in a minute. But outside of that, it's fantastic.
So copper is Vallejo Metal Color copper.
Yeah, there's a couple coppers that are okay to work with, but why get clever when you can use the one that covers instantly?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, at least for me, I'm not a particularly good painter. So not that I need like coverage to just be like, oh, here's one paint coat, I'm done. But I don't have the artistic mind to be like, oh, if I have this color and then I layer this other color and then I layer this other color because they don't really cover quite that well, it's going to be awesome. I can't do that. I just need it to cover and do what it's supposed to do. So I like paints that gives me the color that I'm expecting. The Vallejo Metal Color copper does that.
Okay, so gold is the last one where we're going to go real in depth on, because I know this is sounding like it's going to be a 3-hour episode.
This matters for Custodes.
Gold is a very difficult color. No one makes a good one. There's a very good Vince Venturella episode on gold specifically, where he shows you his gold recipe. I love Vince to death, but I will hate him forever for making me use that, because I can never go back.
Yeah.
And it requires me to custom mix my paint. And it is the best gold ever, where you mix 2 parts Vallejo Metal Copper, 3 parts Vallejo Metal Gold, and a bit of Green Stuff World Antique Gold Pigment. Very difficult to mix it right and get the result, but it's so good compared to everything else once it's mixed.
But we do have an acceptable, easy one.
The way lower effort version of this that's not as good is to just go with Scale 75 Dwarven Gold. Scale 75 has good metals.
Yep.
Really good metals, to be honest. They're a terrible bang for your buck compared to what Vallejo has, and Vallejo's already thin enough that you can dry brush and airbrush it well, and those are the 2 main ways I apply metals.
Yeah.
So this one loses compared to those usually, but since gold is a weak point in the pre-made bottle for Vallejo Metal Color line, I give it to Dwarven Gold from Scale 75.
Let's move on to bronze.
Bronze did not have a good answer until 2 weeks ago. You've never even seen this paint.
No, I haven't. And I was like, wow, I'm going to have to try this because I hate all the bronze options.
Yeah. You could argue a second one if you think decayed metal is a bronze.
I mean,
that's a whole thing.
Sure.
I am picking Pro Acryl's new Matte Sex Wishes Dark Bronze. I don't like their normal bronze very much, but I really like dark bronze.
Their normal bronze is actually bad, in my opinion. I've tried it. I don't like it at all.
Yeah, I can't say anything good for it. I wish Vallejo had a bronze type color that I felt was bronzy. I think a lot of people write bronze and it ends up looking like brass, which to me is a way different color.
Because they are.
I know. But people seem to think they're the same thing.
I'm saying this as somebody who's like not a particularly savvy color individual.
No, I'm talking about metals. You and I are aware of how metal looks compared to how to color something chartreuse.
Yeah.
I learned what chartreuse is, and now I can use this as a weapon.
I don't know what that is, and that's fine. I don't really care, but...
It's the bright yellow-green you've seen on a fire truck before.
Oh, nice.
Remember like in the 90s when they had those really bright yellow-green fire trucks? That is chartreuse.
I'm sure I'll remember that. Yeah, definitely. I do look forward to seeing how this Pro Acryl dark bronze from the artist Max Sexwish is actually working.
I've used it on a single test model. Every paint on here, this is the one I am the least comfortable putting on here, but I just almost skipped having a bronze in general.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm interested, because it's at least made it past the base idea, because nothing else does.
I know my second place, and I despise it. My second place is actually Balthazar Gold by GW, which is the Nada Gold. It's what my shoulders are on my Necrons.
I remember you saying that.
It's a miserable fucking paint. It is horrible to use, but it is the color I wanted. So anyway.
Brass.
Let's talk for a moment. We haven't mentioned GW at all on this list.
Here we are.
GW is tied with Pro Acryl for the thing with the most entries on this list.
And it's because of this next section.
It is because of this next section. So we're starting out with Runelord Brass is my brass of choice. It's not a very brassy brass. I custom mix my brass, but Runelord Brass is a really good color and it says brass in the name.
Wow. I actually do kind of like it, as much as I find it a pain in the ass to work with.
It's a neat off silver I really like. It's a good, unique color. But yeah, I custom mix my brass out of duraluminum and sepia ink.
Okay.
But that's what the bright brassy color is on all of my Drukhari. That's a custom mix. There you go. Secrets.
Secrets, yeah. Bone, though. This one.
Okay, so this gets into the next section. This is not colors, obviously. The contrast paints deserve to be on this list. It is the thing that GW makes that I actively seek out when I am painting. They are amazing tools, especially if you own an airbrush. They're just really good when you're starting out, which is why they should be a core to your list.
And especially if we're not having oils.
Yeah, if you're making shading harder and all that, then you probably want some contrast paints because you get to skip shading.
At which point, like you said, GW does good contrast paints.
Now, we have full access to both the 1.0 version of Army Painter's range that I am not a fan of whatsoever. I know they made a 2.0, but the fact they had to do that speaks for itself, and why Army Painter is not on this list at all. The other one is, obviously, Vallejo has the new paint line. We have it. I don't even remember the name. We tested some models with it for one day where we did like 40 Poxwalkers with my buddy. Very cool paints. No issue with them. Cheaper than contrast paints, but I don't have enough attachment to them to tell you the names of them like I do with my contrast paints that I've used multiple bottles of.
At some point in the future, maybe this will change, but I mean, this is kind of the go-to at the moment.
Yeah, so that's why we're using contrast instead of anybody else. So let's rattle some off. Bone, Skeleton Horde contrast. If you want a light skin tone, Gilliman Flesh is amazing. Dark skin tone, Cygor Brown is very good. If you want dead skin, Magos Purple, especially if you thin it a bit with the contrast medium, great. It's a really useful color because it's a terrible color. That'll make sense once you use it.
Yes.
It covers terribly, which makes it good because you can accent something to look sickly purple.
Which is why it's something that like I have no interest in doing because it makes me think, so...
So yes, you cover normal skin with Magos Purple that's been thinned down, and now you have dead skin. But anyway, for green skin, I like Plaguebearer Flesh. Eric's Orcs, the test model I made used the Plaguebearer Flesh over a Zenithal to make instant Orc skin. I know Eric is looking at different ways to do it for his full Orc range when he actually paints them all, but that's more complicated.
Yeah, I agree that Plaguebearer Flesh for green skin is the right choice. It's just not really what I'm looking for Orcs, but it is good.
Then leather, snakebite leather is the easiest way on the earth to make leather. This is confirmed by the best painter in our group who still despises making leather.
It's the right way to do it though.
For a good reddish fur, Gorgunta fur is amazing, like a red brown, really good. And then I just filled out the rest of these with ones that I just always use. So transparent blue, Talisar blue, it's really good. Transparent red, Flesh Terrors. It's just a very good dark red. I will use it whenever I need red very quickly. It's on a bunch of my Drukhari. It's a good way to show torn flesh on my flayed ones, stuff like that, which I don't even know if I have a picture of, but I won't be getting one this week.
I wonder why.
Then Transparent Yellow, the new one. This is the only one that's from the new range of contrasts, which I have liked but have way less attachment to. Bad Moon Yellow is really good, and there's not many good ways to get a good yellow.
And I'm absolutely going to be using some of this, so...
This, through an airbrush over a white,
Yep.
makes an instant bright yellow.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty sweet.
For black, a lot of people will say the new Black Legion is better, but I'm attached to Black Templar. It's on all of my black contrast painted models, so that's my black of choice still. And I think everyone in our playgroup uses Black Templar still. I know people say Black Legion is just an upgrade to it, so there you go. Maybe you want to grab Black Legion.
And then Green Glow.
Yeah, so this one's technically not a contrast paint. It's technically a technical paint.
Sure.
I don't know the difference, but Tesseract Glow is amazing for making green glowing effects, using it for Space Marine eyes, using it for Necron energy if you want. If you want something to glow green,
Tesseract Glow.
grab Tesseract Glow. It's better than any contrast at it. It does the work of several layers of highlighting.
Yeah, it really does. And it's got the right green that also has like, you know, it's one of those that like the glow from green can be different hues or whatever. This one is like the expected from Hollywood that's given us that expectation.
Okay, so we've been through blacks, whites, grays, ivory, metals, and then we slammed through the contrast range.
So we're on to the more basic colors.
Yeah, so now we just gotta finish out actual colors. And this is where it's gonna get fast and boring, because it's literally just, here's our favorite red.
Yeah,
Dark red, burnt red by Proacryl.
I love that one.
It's so good. My reds on my Drukhari, if it's on a vehicle, is burnt red, and then for the highlight, it's red. It's our red choice, which is Proacryl Bold Pyrrole red. Very good poppy red.
They actually work really well together for that specific reason.
Oh, it's so good. And if you're looking, well, we'll get later. It's in the list.
Pink.
Pink is a hard one.
This is a difficult color, honestly. And to me, I feel like you should just mix your own, but...
No, pink is really hard to get right. Squid Pink, which is from Vallejo, but it's in the game color line. It's pretty much the only pink that I like out of the bottle for like a normal pink color. And this is the one that I think literally everyone in our play group goes to constantly if they need like brain or something like that, or, you know, something tentacly that's pink.
Yeah.
So then moving from pink into plum, which is reddish purple.
Thanks. I wasn't sure.
It's a unique color. It's tough. I think my pick is actually Warlord Purple, which I don't consider to be a purple. It definitely has red tones to it. It's also from the game color line of Vallejo. It's a beautiful color. If you want like not a royal purple, but...
It's like the purple that's not royal purple.
Yes, the other shade of purple, which is why it's under plum.
Yeah. But if you're looking for actual purple, Proacryl's got you covered.
We finally have a good answer.
Thank you.
Proacryl's Vince Venturella's Royal Purple is the best purple. It is the color purple when you think of the color purple. It's really hard to get that shade as a paint.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
I will say light purple would go to Proacryl Purple, which tends to be what most paints call purple. It's a very light purple. It doesn't have any oomph to it.
Yeah.
And I know that technical people who may watch this episode one day will die inside that I don't know how to say these words better.
But this is how we talk. And Proacryl's purple is not what you would expect out of a purple color when you're just thinking of it. At least I don't think so, and I think most people don't.
It's why I have it as light purple.
Yeah.
It's very good as a light purple. It's a highlight color purple.
Yes.
It's not what I want when I go, I want a purple cape.
Yeah.
That's not the color I'm picturing.
Because you're thinking of like the deep purple.
Yes, I want to think of like Roman
Yeah.
royal purple.
And yeah, the Proacryl normal purple is not that. But moving on to magenta, Proacryl's magenta is fantastic in my opinion.
Magenta is actually one of the ones where I have like 4 I wanted to pick. But since we limited it to 1, I spent a lot of time in the blues to purples to pinks ranges because Thousand Suns, Zinj Demons, I live here.
Yeah, it's kind of your thing. I am kind of surprised that you didn't just be like, well, we're going to talk about this other one instead.
No, I think it's up there. If it's not my favorite, it's close to it. And it's a
Okay.
great color. And this gets into the yet another, I can't describe why this isn't pink or purple. I know magenta is different and I can point at it.
Right.
I can't tell you why magenta is different.
It's because it's got, like, you know, the different gray tones part of it.
My brain will go, no, you don't need a purple, you need a magenta. Or no, you don't need a pink, you need a magenta. I don't know why. I don't know how, but my brain knows. All right, so now we can race through a lot of the more normal colors. So let's do dark blue, blue, light blue. We actually managed to, in one color, hit 3 companies.
Yeah.
This is pretty much my go-to for painting up a blue. So you start with scale 75 navy blue, you move into Pro Acryl's blue, and then for light blue, I like using Vallejo Model Color Deep Sky Blue. Sky blue is brighter, but if you just add some white, you get that. So just choose Deep Sky Blue and you get 2 for by just mixing in some white when you want to go even higher.
And like you said, use these 3 and you'll figure out how to go from dark to light, and it'll blend very well, even though they're not the same line.
And blue is that color I've gotten pretty good at manipulating by adding in some purple or adding in some green and shifting it a bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of, coincidentally, next up is Jade. Pro Acryl Jade is just the Jade paint to me. If you want to make like a green, but like a deep bluish green, but still very clearly green. And it's really good to accent some blue stuff. And then for turquoise, there's no other pick. Vallejo Model Color Blue Green. Pretty much everybody uses it. It's amazing.
It's turquoise. Like, when you think turquoise, that's what it is. That's what it looks like on the model.
To be very fair, Pro Acryl Turquoise.
It's fine.
It is a hair off from it, though. I can tell the difference. I've used both of them on the same model for different effects in a different part of a scheme. They are slightly different, I can tell, but they are very close. So if you couldn't get a hold of one, Pro Acryl Turquoise is very close.
Dark green.
These are the ones I had, like, very little experience with. Dark green, green, puke green, bright green. Yeah. Of these, I only really screw around with bright green.
Dark green's scale 75 boreal green is pretty decent.
Yeah, and then scale 75 Arati green is what we chose for the neutral green. I think these are the 2 you used on Roth's Great Unclean one.
Yep.
When you were doing the darker greens.
For the darker greens, that's what I used. And then eventually I went to the bright green. But I actually skipped puke green.
Yeah, well, puke green is just here because we're playing 40k. And if I don't give an answer for this, we're just alienating Death Guard players.
Yeah.
But dark yellow green from the Pro Acryl Vince Venturella range is a really good pukey green. I don't have a better way to describe that. It's a gross, sickly green. You know what you want.
For actual bright green, though, Pro Acryl's bright yellow green is fantastic. I actually really, really like that, and it lets you do a lot of different accenting pop.
Thinned through an airbrush, you can do some magic with this when you need something to look like glowy energy.
Works out really well.
It also, I have done some neat stuff in Demon Land between this one and our yellow choice, which is Pro Acryl Golden Yellow. Yellow's a very difficult paint, and I don't even love Pro Acryl Golden Yellow.
But it's the best out of what we have.
And that's why my answer is go white and then spray the contrast paint over it.
The Pro Acryl Golden Yellow is solid.
It's still not great. Like, there's not a yellow paint I'm in love with.
Yeah. I've been looking at some of the more artist ones because, like, I am actively looking for yellow because of orcs, and I'm just going to end up doing the Bad Moon Yellow contrast, I'm sure. But Pro Acryl's Golden Yellow is, like, the best out of these that I know of, and I'm not sold on it.
So, speaking of going to artist brands, so orange, notoriously difficult color as well.
Well, that's because it's fucking toxic.
Yeah, it's terrible. So, when I was looking for orange for my Chaos Knights, I took a bunch of 3D printed models we had, I zenithalled them all, and I sprayed every orange we owned and bought 4 more and sprayed all those at them.
And the vast majority of them were actually bad.
They looked like ass. Orange sucks. So, the best orange I found is Golden's High Flow Acrylics Pyral Orange. This is the orange that is the main orange on my Chaos Knights. It is a very poppy orange.
Yeah.
This is the one that's in your head when I say the color orange and you go, damn, that's a bright ass orange. If I had to pick a second one for this list, it's what I do afterwards to shade it down. I actually take Grifthound Orange, which is a contrast. I thin it slightly slightly and I spray it in the darker areas over this, and it does a really nice fade from a bright orange to a dark orange. That's basically the only other thing I found that I liked. And that's over like all the contrast alternatives we own too.
I think one of my problems with the orange is coverage. It doesn't do a great job of covering over other things.
Yeah, I guess that's a great warning. This is a transparent paint.
Yeah.
There isn't an orange that goes over stuff that looks good.
No, there just isn't.
You have to go over white.
Yeah.
The only alternative is actually, I love this trick. It is one that I first saw from Goobertown, where you take something, you paint it pink,
Oh, yeah.
and then you put yellow ink over it, and yellow plus red equals orange. But since it's pink, it will become a very bright orange, because anytime you mix the colors, you darken them down instead of the white. So yellow plus pink is a good poppy orange.
Which is, again, one of those like magic things that doesn't make any damn sense to me. So I'll stick to the color it white and then put this golden high flow orange over it.
Okay, so now we've got brown. The new Pro Acryl Ninjon Warm Brown wins out for me. It's a really nice brown. There's a lot of brown options that look good. It's up to you.
Yeah, there's a lot of brown options.
We like Pro Acryl because we airbrush a lot. Pro Acryl does not need to be fucked around with to airbrush nicely.
Yeah.
A lot of paints suck at it. Scale is kind of a pain to thin down to airbrush right. Scale is very, very good.
There's some really nice scale browns, but
It just comes down to like, scale is very good, but it's more work than grabbing the Pro Acryl. I'm gonna grab the Pro Acryl I like.
yeah. I guess finish off with a couple washes.
Yeah, so the last two things we have is washes and wildcards.
Ooh.
I checked, and I am almost 100% sure that a wash technically counts as an acrylic paint, so I put them in the list and forced myself to eat up slots on them, because if we're targeting new people, they need shades.
I do feel like it's a technical. I'm not sure I believe you, but I think having access to these is very useful, so I'm okay with it.
I will say this, shades and contrast paints use the same formula now with different amounts of ink, or whatever is like the color pigmented in them. If shades aren't acrylic paints, then neither are contrast paints.
I think it comes down to the fact that these washes don't need anything special, whereas like using like actual oils, enamels, inks require another skill set that you need to become accustomed to.
Yes, I would recommend learning oils and enamels to people who are on the fence about it, but if I'm targeting a new person, just grab a shade for your first, army or whatever. When you want to get experimental and try something that people tell you is better, then go listen to the advice I just said.
And if we're gonna start with shades, Null Oil, right?
I use Null Oil less than I use the other three now, but I think that's partly because I use all of these very rarely now.
Yeah.
Null Oil is a black wash. Agrax is my brown wash. Reikland Flesh Shade is the skin wash / making gold pop more. Then for a purple wash, Druchii Violet. Why did I choose a purple wash? Because it's really good in a lot of scenarios.
And again, purple is difficult sometimes. So
purple is also just a really good way to shade a blue and stuff instead of trying to go for like a blue black, something more like Drakenhof Nightshade. I often find like a purple one really works.
It gives it that like subtle, when you rotate the model, it looks more interesting.
It can also look bad. Sometimes you don't go for it, but like there are scenarios where I think it's important.
So you said Wildcard being the last one. All right then.
So we ran out of colors that I felt were required.
So we just added a couple because 50 sounds better than 45.
It was more, the list was done, and then I went, well, I need to add the contrast. And then I added those. And I was like, I should add the shades. I added those. And then I was like, well, now we're at a weird number of things. So I'll add in the bronze that I think is good. And now I'm at 45, and screw it, 50 is a good round number to advertise. So we'll do 5 wild cards.
Wow.
So yeah, the wild cards are things where it's like, they don't have a specific thing to point to where I go, it's the best of this, but it's a good accent to ones that we already picked.
Yeah.
The first one of them is Mahogany from Pro Acryl.
This is one that you've explained to me and makes sense.
Yes. So Mahogany is the one that it's like a red brown. I use it as the thing below burnt red now.
Yeah.
I really like going from Mahogany to burnt red. And then if you want to go to bright red, you can add bold Pyrrole red to get like all the way from your dark to your light. You can also stop part way, which is how I've been using it when I was experimenting with a corn thing. I really like mahogany into burnt red. When you want like darker red, but you can feel like three-dimensionality to it, mahogany from the bottom, burnt red from the top.
Yeah, because you don't have to then go from like burnt red to red and be like, well, it's now brighter than I wanted.
Now it's cartoony and I wanted something more down, yeah. So then the next one is actually Eric.
Proacryl Faded Plum.
I think this is Eric's favorite purple.
I mean, yeah, most likely.
It's barely a purple, but it is a fun color. I really like it.
That's the thing is, like, it's difficult to call it a purple, which is why I like putting this as like a wild card and why I'm not really like talking in the purple section about this one, because it doesn't make any damn sense as a purple, really. But for a lot of the things that I wanted to have out of the purple, Faded Plum just nailed it.
I like it a lot. I know you have used it. I really like it, but like I don't have that much experience using it. So it's not my purple, but if it's someone else's army has this as like their purple accent color and it's that like Easter purple, I'll call it. It's neat. It's very unique.
It is unique. And I think that that's why I like it so much, is because I'm not a huge fan of the non-actual purple. So like our purple was Vince Ventrella's Royal Purple.
Yeah, but that one's very new, so we never really had it.
And I'm going to look forward to seeing how that actually works with Faded Plum. But because the normal Proacryl purples and honestly all of like everybody else's purples I didn't like them. They didn't feel like they were purple. It was like, fine, if I can't get actual purple, I'll do this instead. And it had that unique, like, oh, that's cool. So
I will say Scale 75's Violet was my old favorite of like the dark purple look. I don't know.
It was fine, but it still wasn't purple.
I don't like using Scale 75 very much from like, I can't airbrush it well. I mean, you can, but I can't.
It's good for dry brushing.
Yes, very good for that. Very good for normal painting, but I do less normal painting than I do the other two.
So what else do you have on the wild card?
Next up is, I couldn't resist because I picked everything else I've used in Demons, so I might as well pick it. Proacryl Vince Ventrella Dark Jade.
All right.
This is also Artist Line Proacryl. They've added a lot of really good colors at the suggestion of artists. Dark Jade is amazing. It accents Jade really well. It works as a low point to build up into different colors really well.
All right. I mean, I haven't seen it at all.
Imagine Jade, but it's a deeper one.
Could be interested in that.
I'll show you some of my demons and where I used it, but it's like, it's hard to see because I use it as like the first step in going up colors.
Right, which has always been kind of the problem with Jade, is like, how do you actually show transition from dark to light?
Yeah, where you tended to go from like a dark standard color into Jade.
So next up, I see the one call out to AK.
This is here as a warning. Hot pink is a cool color. Everyone agrees. Hot pink is awesome.
Yes.
If you watched the Barbie movie or something and you were like, damn, I need some hot pink on my models.
Good fucking luck.
It is a miserable color to paint. They're all awful. Every last one of them is awful. They either don't look like a hot pink, which is very common because hot pink is a hard color to nail.
Well, because a lot of it is based on lighting.
Yeah.
Like that's how it can work on Hollywood movie screen, is because they're forcing the lighting to do the work for them.
Yeah, and it's hard to do a deep pink that is bright. When you go bright pink, you tend to go like a pale pink and it looks like brain matter or something.
Yep.
Which is fine, but it's not when you wanted a hot pink. So, if you have to do hot pink, which I recommend you don't do.
But
the only one, when I bought every hot pink we could find, the only one I liked was AK Interactive Fluorescent Magenta. I have used 4 bottles of this paint. I despise using this paint, but it is the only one that was usable at all that looked like hot pink, which means when you grade on a curve, it's an A+.
yeah, it's 100% because it's the only one that did enough.
Yeah, so AK Interactive Fluorescent Magenta is hot pink. There is not a substitute until you get into actually taking pigments and making your own.
Yeah.
Which my wife, of course, bought those pigments and will be making her own when she does stuff. But anyway.
Yeah, but it's one of those, like, I can do some mixes, but, like, hot pink is going to be a nightmare.
There you go. AK Interactive might be an amazing brand. My first thing I used of them is not a color that you probably should. But I understand that compared to the alternatives I had, it was the best of the bunch.
What are we gonna end this on? Wildcard number 5.
I didn't realize this made the list. I shouted it out earlier that Decayed Metal could be considered a bronze. I didn't realize I had left it on here. Cool. So I like Decayed Metal. I fell in love with it someone recently, like the last 9 months, when I was doing a bunch of terrain stuff. And my brother has had all the scale metals, and I don't use them very much. He was like, try Decayed Metal for that, because I was doing the normal me thing and complaining that I didn't have a good bronze, and I wanted like an aged look on this terrain piece. And he was like, try Decayed Metal, just dry brush it on. And I did it, and it felt wonderful. It looks like Decayed Metal. It looks like an old ass bronzy metal.
It looks like Decayed Metal, and it looks like what we expect out of decayed bronze, because bronze is old whenever you see it, kind of thing.
As opposed to new bronze, which is always brighter. Yeah.
But like there's a reason that it honestly scale 75 decayed metal is not the bronze, because it's the decayed bronze essentially. It's the old.
Now, as a final thing before we leave, that was our 50th paint. Round of applause.
Woo!
Before we leave though, I'm assuming on the YouTube if Borrelio loves you all very much, as he shows these paints off, he is putting a price of them on the screen in US dollars for Americans, because I ain't doing this for everybody on Earth. So we used prices from various websites for these different paints. Vallejo, we used Miniature Market because it's like the only large website I could find that had the whole Vallejo range. I think it was still missing Squid Pink. It had the air version of it. Good enough, I guess. But that kind of speaks to a problem with telling people I like Vallejo. I can access it because I have an LGS that has it. I have 2 of them that have it. But I have heard of people where like the nearest bottle of Vallejo is 100 miles from them. So it's rough to get a hold of in the States. It's a shame because it's a cheap brand and good quality.
It is surprisingly cheap.
So we'll get into price in a second as we wrap these up. But second, GW, we use the GW store MSRP. Buy it on Amazon, it'll be cheaper. Scale 75, I use Scale 75 USA, obviously. You can buy it straight from them for these prices. Shockingly, I think Scale 75 lowered their prices because these are like very reasonable prices and closer to Pro Acryl and Vallejo than I remember. I remember these things being like $7+ a bottle, and they were a horrendous brand to try to buy.
I think that was because they were difficult to track down for a little while.
Yeah, but they're like $4.50 a bottle, which makes them a very good paint range. I always think of them as the overpriced artsy-fartsy one. They're pretty affordable. So Scale 75 gets a thumbs up there. Golden, I just used Blick because it's like a major art retailer across the US.
Yeah.
Pro Acryl, Monument Hobbies website. AK Interactive gets into the Vallejo problem, but worse. It's kind of a good reason it's not on this list, except for the one paint. And that is because I can only really find it on Amazon and hope that you get it. Like, it's really hard to find places that aren't a local mom and pop LGS that has some, which is like a really rough one to tell people, hey, go get AK Interactive's paint range. Good luck.
And I mean, this is obviously like everybody's gonna have their own accessibility things. And like, if you're in Europe, it's gonna be different. If you're in South America, hey, Brazil, looking at you, gonna be tough to get some of these. But this is what we know because these are the ones that we bought.
Yeah, so at the prices that I found on the Googles using these websites that I mentioned, this 50 paints works out to $285.70 plus tax. I miss the good old days when you never paid your taxes online.
Which is not cheap.
It's not, but it's also 50 paints for under $300, and it's pretty much just the like $5-ish a paint.
Right. Again, if you're just getting into this, you don't need to buy all 50 of these paints.
Oh God, no. Someone out there is stupid enough to just use this as a shopping list. To you, I tip my hat, and our Patreon is at patreon.com/solely-singleton.
Yeah. You can just round it up to 300 and give us the rest. No, but really, this is like, get the ones that you think you're going to use. You're not going to need all of it. $300 is a lot of money, but again, get the ones you need. And the ones that you're going to use less often are going to last a while. If you're not painting that much of a red army and you're just using it as an accent for certain weapons or something like that, then a single bottle of Pro Acryl is going to last you a while.
For people who are newer joining this episode for advice instead of just a fun desert island paint list,
yeah,
it will be rare you ever buy a second bottle of a paint unless it's like a color that you just use a ton ton of. Like, I've probably bought 10 Vallejo monocolor blacks because I use it for every black on every model I've ever done and every rim.
I'm not sure I'd ever have enough Pro Acryl Bold Titanium White.
I think we have 4 bottles of it in my brother's basement at this point.
Yeah.
And then I've got 2 at my house because we never want to run out.
No, it really is one of those, like, we use it constantly.
And it's the Frank's Red Hot sauce where you put that shit on everything.
Just about. But at the same time, like, there's a bunch of paints that we've never had to buy a second one of because we used it a bit, did its job, and it'll be ready for the next time it needs to do that job.
Yeah, you can paint a whole army on 1 bottle of paint in most cases. Yeah, so it's not that big of a deal. And again, like, I say things like, it's $300 a paint. And you're like, that's so much money. And then, you know, you've played this for 5 years. You have 2 painted armies or 3 painted armies or whatever. And I tell you to go look at your shelf. How many paints do you have? And you go, which shelf? The shelf? The other shelf? The drawer?
Right. Or the table.
This rack? The table? Next to my airbrush? At a certain point, you've been here a while, this is chump change at this point.
I think once you get the paints that you're going to use for the current projects that you've got, if you just happen to be in an LGS and see some of these and are like, I really want to buy a paint, pick one up. This will be a nice little reference list.
That's a great way to say it. Those are the ones I'd absolutely recommend. With all that out of the way, though, if you're on YouTube, please do the YouTube pleasantries. It helps. Otherwise, let's get out of here for the week.
Sounds good.